Okay, we are learning. We haven't learned for a week. I apologize for that, but we're back. We're learning in Nefesh Hachaim, Shaar Daled Perek Tezvav.
1972. He passed away Chav Cheshvan. I think it was Tafshin Nun Hey. My mother can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was 94. I think it was around Yitzchak Rabin, same thing. He was a professor of mechanical engineering in Ben Gurion University. He was the first head of the department, actually, in Ben Gurion in the Negev. He was an ethical man, honest man, always loved the brain challenge. He was a professor, very intellectual. Last 5 years of his life were hard. He was in and out of hospital. It was not an easy time. Never complained, but he did become a lot more grateful and appreciative of the small things in life towards the end. So going from a big professor, a big intellectual, he got a new appreciation, and that's something my mother took away from that time.
What was his name?
Shmuel ben Yosef.
Oh, Ben Yosef. So now we know where you got your brilliance from, Gil. Okay, he should have an aliyah. His neshama should have an aliyah.
Amen.
Okay, we are learning. We haven't learned for a week. I apologize for that, but we're back. We're learning in Nefesh Hachaim, Shaar Daled Perek Tezvav, and let me just refresh everybody's memory that in Perek Yud Gimel and Yud Daled, Nefesh Hachaim told us the astonishing chidush. He taught us that since Istakel by Raisa Bara Alma, since Hashem looked into the Torah, and that's what he used to create the world. So, being that we know the Yesod, he put together a couple of Yesodas. We know the Yesod that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is constantly creating and recreating the world. So that means he's Istakel by Raisa Bara Alma. He's looking at our Torah because and Bara Alma, and the world is being created through Limud HaTorah differently than it would be created otherwise if it would be created at all. And there's always got to be somebody learning Torah in order to recreate the world. So before we leave that and do a review of Perek Tezvav, I just want to share with you something that I saw in Reb Tzadok HaKohen, which is almost the same thing with a knetch. But he writes here, you know how we say in davening, it's a Gemara Brachas, Samach Daled, Al Tikrei Bonayich Ela Boinayich. Al Tikrei Bonayich Ela Bonayich. That Talmidei Chacham Marbim Shalom B'Yolam. And the Gemara there, which is brought in our Tefillah, after Ein Kelokenu, is, and Chol Bonayich Limudei Hashem, all of your children are learning Torah. Al Tikrei Bonayich Ela Bonayich. Don't call them just your sons, but they are your builders. Bonayich. Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom B'Yolam, but they are Bonayich. So Reb Tzadok says, Ein Yom, I want you to catch the nuance between the Reb Tzadok and the Nefesh Hachaim. Chassid and Misnagid. Ein Yom she'ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mechadesh halacha beveistin shel malo. Every day, Hashem is mechadesh halacha beveistin shel malo. Lefi sha'olam nivra b'divrei Torah. Because since the world is created b'divrei Torah, like it says, Ani ayisi kliyum nasei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Amachadesh b'tuvay b'chol yom ma'aseh bereshis. World was created every day. Hu al yedei chidush halacha b'chol yom. So this is interesting that Hashem is mechadesh halacha. That's something different. V'acher matan Torah, and here's the kuda. After matan Torah, nimsar halacha l'chachamim. The Torah, and we talked about this on Hoshana Rabbah and on Shmini Atzeret, we talked about this, that the Torah was now given through Moshe Rabbeinu. It was given to man. It's our Torah. Torah as Moshe. Sheheim mechatshim Torah shebal peh. This was the difference, if you recall, between the Luchos Rishonos and Luchos Shnios. Luchos Rishonos were given to us. Here it is. Take it. Here's the deal. We violated that deal. But in the second Luchos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, we're shutfim now. You need to participate. So the participation is called, the name of that participation is Torah Shebal Peh. And this is given, this is the words that touched me. V'hu masha Hashem Yisbarach mofia belev hachachomim b'chol pam chadoshos b'Torah Shebal Peh. Means that there's a phenomenon wherein when we're learning Torah, so ein beis medrash b'li chidush. A chidush, a new pshat, new understanding, a new havana comes into our mind. HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts that there because once you become part of the marechet of Bria, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs to be mechadish. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says Reb Tzaddik, is first mechadish the halacha and shemayim, and then if you're lucky, it pops down into our minds. But until we are expressing this chidush, it's not evaporating back up to the marechet and creating a new world. So, umishum hachi nikru chachamim boinei olam Shabbos kuf yudalad u'kamosh namar bracha samach dalad al tikre bon nayich ela bon nayich. So we are co-builders in the Torah. I just want to add a little bit to this, and I want to say one other thing in Reb Tzaddik. But what does it mean Hashem is creating a Torah is a Torah? What does it mean He's creating a new halacha every single day? Ein l'cha yoim v'yoim. How could it be? Ahu ayidei chidush halacha b'chol yom. The Kodesh Baruch Hu is mechadish halacha b'veistin shel mala. So I think what it simply means, I don't think we have to get too Kabbalistic here, but I think what it simply means is that the world's a-changing. The world is different every single day. These last couple of days and these last couple of months, we see it like in our eyes. Sometimes it's more subtle. The world is changing. The president is changing. Lahavdil Gedolim are changing. Everything is changing, and the world itself is changing. Illness, there's a new reality. So new reality needs a new Torah. Not that the essence of the Torah changes, but it needs to be applied anew. And that is, if you look at it, if you understand deeply the idea of Torah Shebal Peh, that's really what it's all about. It's about, taking, and for that matter, all poskim throughout all the generations, and all Chidushei Torah is looking at the world that we're living in and saying, aha, das hat the Torah gemacht. Meaning, there's a new application, something that perhaps we thought we understood before. There's so many examples of this with this Enkan Makomo. Something we thought we understood, and we only understand it once the world changes. So this is what it means, that not that the essence of Torah, Vayidaber Hashem Moshe Lemor, is changing, but the Torah being an eternal document is forever requiring to change because the world is changing and the Torah is for the world. So so that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to not just look at the Torah every day to be mechadish the world every day, but that's why he has to be mechadish chidushim, and the recipe, the fodder, the raw material for the new bria is the new Torah, and that new Torah, this is for us. You see, this is for us. We're not. Most of us are not gedolim, or at least to speak for myself. But what we can do is look at a situation and see something in a way that nobody ever saw it before. So sometimes, like Aliyah Cotton, I have a certain diuk, which is emes la'amitoi, and I think to myself, why didn't anybody ever say this before if it's emes? And the answer is, it's okay. Everyone's entitled to a new diuk. Maybe that diuk wasn't for the world at that point. And you see that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai at one point at the Hakdama of the Zohar, he talks about how it's come time that I have to be Megalos Sod. So it doesn't mean that there was no Sod before, but this is the time to be, he felt, this is the time, at that time, by the time of the Chorban Beis HaMikdash, time of the Romans, that we have to understand, we're not understanding things on a superficial level. It doesn't work anymore. Asar Ruge Malchus, it doesn't work on us. So we have to understand the depth of it. And he darshan the depth of every single pasuk in the Torah and every single concept in the Torah, and for that, and he was a big Tana. He was a big Tana in Halacha also. But he felt that it was a zman to be Megalos Sod. And this is what you find all these different paradigm shifts. Nevi'im, Anshe Knesses Hagdola, Tanoim, Amoraim, Rishonim, Achronim, Balei Kabbalah. This was all taking the Masorah that we had and bringing it forward with a whole new light. So that's I believe a deeper understanding of the Torah that we're learning is helping understand the world today. I think that's what it means. There's one more word from Reb Tzadok, which I found very inspiring. That Reb Tzadok is in Pri Tzadok in Devarim. But there's also a Reb Tzadok which is in the Kehillas Hamincha, which Chelik Sheni Ois Chaf Beis, which spoke to me. And he says as follows, I'm just going to read you his words. Ein la'adam, if I'd be more sophisticated, I would get it on the screen for you, but I'm not so sophisticated. Ein la'adam lasum tachlis u'mechuvan la'eze davar prati. Listen carefully. A person should not become a specialist. I'll become a specialist. This is what I do. Like my specialty is prayer. I'm a big prayer. My specialty is I'm a big learner. This is counterintuitive. I would think everybody should find their little makom where this is where they can make a difference. So he says, no. Ein la'adam lasum hatachlis ha'mechuvan la'eze davar prati kegoin liyos nigdar mitayvos liyos loimei Torah or la'avodu kayotze. What then? Because the Torah says here, this is right in our vocabulary these days. Torah says, "Lech lecha me'artzecha ela aretz asher areka." Bevinas halev shebelev ladas ma rotzain Hashem yisbarach ba'oisoi eis ma yase Yisrael. Because you can't rely on yesterday's expertise. Maybe that's not what's needed today. You're a yesterday person. I mean, as difficult it is personally, people that I knew, Rav David Feinstein I knew, Rav Sachs I knew. It's hard to even imagine like Miyamale Makomam, who has the voice of Rav Sachs, who has the personality and the Kehillas of Rav David Feinstein and the Glattkeit. But the pshat is that everybody in their time and in their generation has to be machadish something new, and he can't get stuck. V'zehu, listen to this. Lech lecha me'artzecha. Leave your aretz. Ritzon lomar mimakim shekavata lecha. You found yourself a little place. Get up and go. She'ata roitza lasos chesed lebrius u'kiyotze shelo yiyeh lecha makim mukbal shelcha. Hashem told Avraham Avinu, you're doing a big thing. You have a yeshiva, a Magayer Sagerim, you're a big philosopher. No, now it's chesed time. Get out of your place. Lech lecha. Rak, where should you go? Ela oretz asher areka, asher ani maroischa. B'chol eisa, b'chol rega ani maroischa, v'zehu artzi u'makoimi, sham tadur. I'll show you where to live. Let the hashgacha pratis roll. I will show you where you should be at this moment. This is very complicated because, we get stuck in something and that's where we want to live. No, that might be where you want to live, but that's not necessarily the right thing. That was yesterday. That was this morning. And the lech lecha, a new pshat, and lech lecha me'artzecha, get out of what you're comfortable with, and on ala aretz asher areka, I will show you where you're supposed to be. If you're open to it, Hashem will show us where we need to be. So it's I thought a beautiful words from Reb Tzadok in Kehillas Hamincha. Yeah? Everybody with me? So in Parak ת.נ.צ.ב.ה, I'll take that as a yes. And
yes.
Thank you. In Parak ת.נ.צ.ב.ה, I have here a new chiddush of Hine HaMevorech Misbarech. New idea that not only are you when you're learning Torah, as we just described, are you meniya the whole world? You're making everything happen, and you're making it happen in a new and a fresh way. Miraneh, new kind of Torah, that's put in our hands since Torah т.נ.צ.ב.ה is around. But not only that, but when we do this, when we get involved in this process, we become an executive mover and shaker in the Bria Ha'olam. So what happens is, Mevarech misbarech, he who's giving the bracha gets the bracha. And we spoke about why that is. We spoke about the Kohanim. The Gemara Rabbi Akiva says the Kohanim not only give a bracha, but when they give a bracha, they get a bracha. And all this also we learned from Avram Avinu, right, mevarchecha. I will bless those who bless. Those who bless will be blessed. So not just you have a koach habracha, but the koach habracha goes on you also. That's what we learned last time we learned. And then if you turn a page or so in the Nefesh Hachaim, talks about our gain in learning Torah, and he says as follows, and I want to be ma'ayin into this for a few minutes today. V'hu, meaning the person, see if you can find the place, haroda u'moshel bakol. Man is in charge of everything. And as such, v'chol hadinin bishin mistalkin me'alav. Rabbi Yaakov, you have the place? V'chol hadinin bishin mistalkin me'alav. All of the negative dinim which are in this world, they leave him. In other words, you, the person who's learning Torah, being that you're creating this cycle of life, so you have immunity, like immunity from all the bad things that can happen. Whether it's, we're talking about things that happen in this world, whether it's in this world where one's Yisurim, all the painful things in this world, B'deilin Hemenu, will not approach him, they'll be separate of him. At Kedei Kach, he says, Ubeparak Ketzad Ma'avrin, that the Gemara says in Erevin Nun Daled, Chosh B'roisha Yasek B'Torah. If you have a headache, learn Torah. Chosh B'groinoi Yasek B'Torah. You have a sore throat, learn Torah. Chosh B'meyav, Chosh B'chol Gufa, Yasek B'Torah. Shenebmar, Ulechol B'Sarei Merapa. Torah is a refuah. Okay, and signoin zan, similar to this style, B'vayikra B'Parsha Yud Beis, V'tanchuma Parshas Yisrael, B'medrash Tilim Mizmar Kuftes Ayin Sham. Okay, yafeh. So now we know that if we learn Torah, we won't have any Yisurim. What's the kasha? Halavai. People learn Torah and they have many Yisurim. Like you have a headache, you learn, still have a headache. It's so. But Chazal say, Chosh B'Roisha Yasek B'Torah. So who has pshat before I start saying what I think is the pshat?
I had an idea just when we said the lashon of Rode, reminded me of Adam Arishon. It says Udu b'tgat hayam uvof hashamayim, and then we see by Cain when he killed Hevel, he lost that, and all of a sudden all the animals could control him. So they didn't learn Torah then, but he kind of lost his Tzelem Elokim, and maybe by us learning, we're becoming like Hashem. So it's the same as the difference between Adam Rishon and Cain.
So why do we still have a headache?
That's Yisurim Shel Ahava v'She'enon Shel Ahava. Chazal say, I think that if it's Yisurim Shel Ahava, then the Torah could be Merape. But if it's Yisurim that Gorim Bitul Torah, then you know it's coming for.
Okay. Let me ask the question in a more lumdish way and see if it works. There's a Gemara. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin Chavav, the Gemara quotes a pasuk in Yeshayahu Chavches. Hifli Eitza Higdil Tushia. Talking about the Torah. Yeshayahu was talking about the Torah. Hifli Eitza Higdil Tushia. Amar Rabbi Chanon. The Torah is called Tushia. What does Tushia even mean? Go ahead, Ephraim, tell us. What does Tushia mean? No, Lo Shomea.
It's a good Eitzah.
Tushia, Eitza v'Tushia.
Tushia is creativity. Tushia.
Tushia. Modern Hebrew word?
Yeah, well, it's also modern, yes.
It's resourceful in modern Hebrew.
Resourceful. Hifli Eitza. So look, that's very in line with what we're learning, right? In other words, there's an element of creativity in the Torah. But listen to this Gemara. Omar Rabbi Chanin, Lama Nikra Shma Tushia, Mipnei Shehi Mateshes Koicho Shel Adam. Because the Torah makes you weak. Maybe one of the most disappointing Gemaras that you're ever going to find. You want to know why you're not feeling well? You learn too much Torah. Torah Mateshes Koicho Shel Adam. That's how we understood this darshan, this word, tushia, lashon tush, weak, the opposite of creativity, I suppose. And so how could it be that Nefesh Hachaim is bringing us all kinds of Gemaras and Chazal, that the Torah makes you healthy, and Yisurim b'deilin mihimanu, and takes away your headache and all your Yisurei Aguf, when the Gemara says mefurish, the Torah mateshes, Koicho Shel Adam, that the Torah makes you weak. And we know this, the Torah makes you weak. I mean, everyone knows that Gemara. The Torah mateshes Koicho Shel Adam. And I was thinking, so like an example is the Gemara in Bava Metzia Pei Daled. So the Gemara in Bava Metzia tells the story, a number of stories. This is the Bava Metzia Pei Daled is the stories of Rabbi Yochanan, not the Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, but Rabbi Yochanan who said when he was a little boy of 3-4 years old, he saw Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi writing. He had a glimpse of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, and that's where he got all his chachma from. That was Rabbi Yochanan. He was a few generations after Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. He lived in Eretz Yisrael, lived in Tiberia, and he was a Gadol Ador. He was a Rosh Hashiva Ador, had thousands of Talmidim, and because of Rabbi Yochanan, because of his godless, so people came back from Bavel and from Golus because they wanted to learn in Rabbi Yochanan's yeshiva, and it's just a very interesting. It was a very interesting paradigm shift from Torah's Bavel to Torah's Eretz Yisrael, which came about through Rabbi Yochanan. But there was a lot of casualties also in Eretz Yisrael, spiritual casualties over first the Hadrian decrees, and then the Hadrian decrees were over, and the Romans were working so hard to try to get their power back in Eretz Yisrael, and every minute they were assering something else. You're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. So one of the casualties was in Eretz Yisrael, although it was open to this yeshiva, Rabbi Yochanan's yeshiva, other yeshivas, mostly Rabbi Yochanan's yeshiva in Tiberia. That's where the action was, in Tiberia. Why? Because it couldn't be in Yerushalayim. But one of the casualties was Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish was a chaver of Rabbi Yochanan when he was a little boy. Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan, Reish Lakish, and then he went off to Derech. He went off to Derech and he became a listim, and he was jumping around in the mountains and he was robbing people. So says the Gemara. Reish Lakisha. So the Gemara says a story here that Rabbi Yochanan. Yoim Achada, this is the Gemara in Bava Metzia Pei Daled. Yoim Achada have a kasachi Rabbi Yochanan b'Yardena. Right, so everybody knows that the Tiberia is not on the Yarden. Tiberia is on the Kinneret. But if you follow the Kinneret down, you get to the Pesach of the Yarden. There's a kibbutz there called Yardena. I don't know how it's pronounced. So visited many times. You could watch how the Kinneret goes into the Yarden. It starts up all the way up north with Pamayas, the Gemara says, with the Banyas, what they call today the Banyas, and it comes down to the upper Jordan, then it goes into the Kinneret, and then from the Kinneret it flows into the Yarden, and it goes through the Yarden, and it keeps on going south until it gets to the Yam HaMelech. And before the Maisa of Stoim and Amir, that was the most fertile place in Eretz Yisrael, the Yam HaMelech, the Dead Sea. Now it's dead already. But so apparently, just like an interesting geographical thing. So Rabbi Yochanan lived in Tiberia, but when he wanted to go bathe, so one time he walked himself down, or got himself down to the Yarden, where the flow is very, very strong over there, and that's where he was bathing. So Yom Echad Havikasachi Rabbi Yochanan b'Yarden. He went swimming in the Yarden. Chazi Reish Lakish, and there he saw Reish Lakish, Ushvar liyarden Abasre. And Reish Lakish saw his old friend Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish wasn't from, as far as I know. So he jumped into Shvar, means he jumped into the Yarden, because that's where he was hanging out, in those mountains. Abasre after Rabbi Yochanan. Amerle. And he says to, Rabbi Yochanan says to Reish Lakish, he says, whoa, what a dive. You're really, you know, yesh lecha koach. So he says, chelcha loy raisa, which probably means that Rashi says, kama koichacha yafal lispol oil haTorah. What a Talmid Chacham you can be with the kind of physical fitness and the koach that you have. Amerle and Reish Lakish answers him back, which was not very nice. He says, Shufrech, Rabbi Yochanan was known to be a very, very beautiful man, physically beautiful. So he told them, Shufrech l'nashi. Rashi says, Roy l'nashim. Like, I think it means your beauty is wasted on a man. Should have been a woman. Shufrech l'nashi. Or some say that it means that, you know, wasted learning Torah, why don't you hang out with the ladies? And so this is Reish Lakish's comment. So here's an interesting conversation. Rabbi Yochanan says to Reish Lakish, you should really learn Torah. Like, imagine what you can do. And he tells him back, you're complimenting for my koach for something I don't do with my koach. Shufrech l'nashi. Amr lei, so Rabbi Yochanan says to him, this is going to be one of the oddest conversations in Shas, by the way. Amr lei, so Rabbi Yochanan says to Reish Lakish, I hadarta bach, if you come back, if you join the yeshiva, if you come back and you become a ben Torah, yahivna lach hachoisi de shapira minai. I'll set it up that you can marry my sister who's even more beautiful than I am. That's all it took for Reish Lakish. Well, like, you know. And Kabil Alei, he was Makabel to stop being a bandit and stop being a crook and come to learn Torah. Kabil Alei.
Lishma.
Boy limaader la suye mana. So now I'm a Talmud of my old friend Rabbi Yochanan. They were the same age. Now I'm a Talmud of my old friend Rabbi Yochanan, and I'm going to go and I'm going to jump in again. La suye mana. I'm going to go get my clothes. He was stuck in the water. He couldn't move. Lost his koach. Akre v'asne v'shavye gavarabba. He read and he learned, and v'shavye gavarabba, and he became a gadol. Story of Rabbi Yochanan. So Rashi says, this is Rashi, not the Gemara. Leimatzi likpoitz kevarishayna. He couldn't swim the way he did a minute ago. The mishikabel olav ol Torah tashash koichai. Because the minute he was makabel ol Torah, he became weak. He didn't even learn anything yet. He didn't even crack a book. But the minute that he was makabel on himself, oil haTorah, that in itself, tashash kocha, made him weak. As the Rabbi Yochanan had to go pull him out of the water, Nebuch. And we don't find anywhere that Rabbi Reish Lakish any longer, not that I know of, maybe I'm missing something. I don't know that we find that he had an extraordinary physical koach. Torah mateshes kocho shaladam. So it feels to me like it's a stira to what we're learning here. Yisurin b'deilin himanu. Like, in other words, like if the Torah is going through me and I'm learning it and I'm creating something new, resourceful, Eitzav Tushia. I'm creating something new and I'm bringing that new up to the Shemayim, and that makes me strong, says the Nefesh Hachaim. So is a strong. HaTorah Mateshes Koicha Shel Adam. Where's my koach that I'm supposed to have? So let me first of all share with you, which could be the pshat, the Ben Ish Chai, Ben Yehoyada, who wrote on Baba Metzia, Ben Ish Chai. And he says, find his lashon here. I'm sorry, he wrote. Did I say wrote on Baba Metzia? He wrote on Sanhedrin. Back to the Torah Mateshes Kocho Shel Adam. So he says here, I'll get his lashon. Kain hi darka shel Torah. He writes about this Gemara. This is the darach of Torah. Shekol ha'oisek ba, anybody who learns Torah, naseh koach chumroi, or chumro, your gashmias koach becomes tush, becomes weak. Why? Kedei sheyiskaber alav koach nishmasai v'daitoi v'chachmasai shekol zman shechumroi shel adam miskaber ein daitoi nechoina utzilula. Ulfiza amru Chazal, and that's why Chazal say, Talmidei Chachamim kol zman shemaskinim. Talmidei Chachamim get old, and when they get old, they get weak. But as the weaker they get, mosifin chachma, the more chachma they have. Why? Lefi shelaesik nasan tash koyach chomer shalahem lakach daito noisefes. The chomer becomes weaker, and as the chomer becomes weaker, the chachma becomes bigger. You know, like they say, like, you know, you're thinking with your hunger, you're thinking with your body. You're not thinking, you know, like you don't have a pure thought if you're full of taifa. If your appetite is big for whatever it's big for, that's challenging your mind. So
is there a smoke here between being weak and being sick?
Might be. Mazkinim, kamazaken. Lo matzinu l'chayra. The Talmidei Chachamim become old and they get stronger. But what does get stronger? Well, that way he's learning it, their chachma gets stronger. Which is still not like the Nefesh Hachaim. Then he brings here in Sanhedrin, he brings the Gemara Baba Metzia. Mihai Taima Amr Chazal. Beparak HaSoichers HaPoilim, that's the Gemara we just learned about Rabbi Yochanan going swimming. The Havikachazi Leila Rabbi Yochanan, the Kasachi Biyardana, Vishavar Le'adrin Arbase, Amr Le'chelcha Le'rais, Amr Le'shufrech Le'nashe, Amr Le'yadirta Bo Yavina L'cha Achaisi, Kibul Boil Meder La'asuye Mana, Le'matzi Hader, Pirish Rashi Sham, which I just learned with you. The Mekabel Alav Torah Toshash Koichai Alma, Afal Gav Dakati Le'havi Torach. You see a different thing, says the Ben Ish Chai. You don't even have to learn Torah, you just have to be Mekabel. Le'yamol Ba Nasa Tosh Koichai. Rak Bekabola Ba'alma, V'tzarech Leimer Dekachi Darkish Shal Torah Kedepirashti. Okay, but he doesn't answer the point. So let me tell you what I believe the answer is, and this I found in a long time ago in Rav Isaac Haber, Talmud HaGra, Ksut B'Shem the Gra. This is a very, very important aside for us today, because Asayim. When the wiring of a person, how are we wired? And the answer is, in Shemayim, there's lots of energy. We can choose to have our energy. Everything in this world can choose their energy from the Koach HaTov or from the Sitra Achra, from the other side. Why Hashem created the world this way is beyond our 5 minutes that we have here. But it has to do, obviously, with Bechira Chavshis. So you can find a real Russia, Hitler, Imach Shemoy V'Zichrai, seems to have unfinishing energy. Why? Because he's tied into a Sitra Achra. Just because you see something has a lot of Koach, it doesn't mean there's Kedusha there. Tied into the Sitra Achra, and the Sitra Achra, the Gra says, is actually a stronger Koach than the Koach HaTov. You know, you'll see somebody running for to fulfill some type of a taiva, much more energy. You know, even if it's not a bad thing, but just it's not much more energy than for doing a mitzvah. You're ready to stay up all night. You're ready to do whatever you got to do. So that may be coming from, that energy might be coming from the Sitra Achra. Something which is a little frightening is the Rosh Hashiva Zatzal used to always say, if you want to do something so badly, it's probably not your Yetzer HaTov talking. What is that? Now, it doesn't mean the Yetzer HaTov doesn't want to do things right, but it's much more adin. It's much more edel. It's much more subtle. When you want to do the right thing, so it's a different type of a drive. It's a subtle drive. It's a drive with patience. So when we say, I'll tell you, it was what I understand. When we say Atayra Mateshes Koicha Shel Adam, what happened, according to the way Rashi understands Reish Lakish, what happens is that, okay, Reish Lakish says, okay, I'll do it, Shalei Lishma, right? That wasn't Shalei Lishma, I want to marry your sister. She's a beautiful lady. When we say that, he immediately pulled the plug out on the Sitra Achra. And he's B'li Koach. And then the Gemara finishes off, Karya V'Tanya, and he became a Gadol Adar. He took the same plug, pulled it out of the Sitra Achra, put it into the Sitra de Kedusha. Subtle, adin, gentle, edel. Is a different type of koach. The koach of Reish Lakish was different than the type of koach of Rabbi Yochanan.
So when Rabbi Yochanan said your koach should go for Torah, what was the source of the koach that he's referring to?
Maybe Rabbi Yitzchak, maybe, and I'm wondering the same question myself, but maybe if you have, like, you know, the Gemara says, Kol HaGadol mechaver Yitzrei Gadol mimenu, that you can measure a person's koach hatov by their koach hara. So, it's like sometimes you see somebody with unbounded energy. It's not that source is going to be the one that's going to energize my Torah, but you see that you're plugged into a huge amount, like in Shamayim, you're plugged into a huge amount of energy source, a big generator. And if you have that koach in the Ra, you can get the koach from the Tov. Chelcha, unplug yourself, maybe it means up above, take that koach that you're getting and chelcha loiraisa, switch it over here. You know, like a guy's with a big switch. And comes with Torah Mateshes Koicha Shel Adam. All of a sudden, I don't have the same koach anymore. But I don't have the koach that's coming with Sitra Achra. I don't have the Yetzer Hara koach. I have a new koach. You know, like the Rambam says that, you know, when you're mechanech a child, you should. The Rambam says this in Shemona Prakim. He says that you should be mechanechim with Yetzer Hara, not with Yetzer Hatov. You want him to learn, give him a prize. You want her to be good, give her a use the Shaloi Lishma. So the Shaloi Lishma, but that's until you become a grown up. So the Shaloi Lishma has to turn to Lishma, and that in itself that it's weakening is gufa strengthening the situation that you're in. Meaning it's a different type of a koach, than the koach you had before. So ulai, I'm going to end this 10 o'clock, but there's a lot to say about this. But ulai after loymar, that the mateshes kocho shel adam and the what Nefesh Hachaim is talking about, the strengthening of the person, that now the light is actually coming through me and I'm a beacon of light. It's Mateshes Koach Shel Adam is going on that koach. And the koach that I have now that I never had before, there's a koach of vision. There's a koach of being able to help people. El Habakar Ratza Avraham. There's a koach to be able to do something for the world and actualize the strengths that we have. Like I said, Reb Tzadok at the beginning, El Aretz Asher Areko. You know how much koach it takes? It's the Rishayim that are not able to reinvent themselves every year. You know, but Tzadikim, okay, this is a different story. You know, a different story now than it was. You have to always ready to accept a new reality. It takes a huge amount of koach. But that's the koach HaTorah. And that koach of reinvention is the koach which is really making the world go round in terms of the renewal, the tushia of the world. So the tushia is gufa mateshes. V'lachein akol misyashiv. Okay, Shavua Tov u'Varach.